Well, hey, everybody. My name is Eric Waldrop. I am with Your Next Step Leadership Coaching, and I am with my friend here, Dean Pollard. Dean, thanks for being with me today.
Hey, great to be here, man.
So, today we're going to be having a conversation all about anxiety, and especially in the realm of leadership anxiety. If you're a leader, you probably felt anxiety at some point in your life just due to the nature of leadership is so uncertain, and with that uncertainty can come feelings of anxiety for sure. And so, Dean, you've got quite a history with this, and I can't wait for you to just be able to talk a little bit about your experiences. But before we get into all that, tell us a little bit about you and your family and what you're doing right now and all that kind of stuff.
Sure, Eric. Thank you. Uh, the good thing about me is that I'm married to a great person named Diana, who's, if you want to reduce anxiety, the first thing I'd say is marry well. And so that's
Yes.
been a very positive thing for me. We have three great kids between 25 and 30, Tyler, Rachel, and Holly. At this stage of life, we're enjoying our first two grandkids.
Nice.
One 2.5-year-old Isla and 8-month-old Fisher are lots of fun, and so just bringing a brand new phase in for us, and just having a great time. So just really enjoying family at this stage as things are kind of changing and watching kids mature and grow.
Dude, that's so cool. And I think you even told me y'all had a recent trip to Disney World with the
Yeah, we got to
grandkids.
do
Yeah.
that. Yeah, I wanted to get that in while I was younger, and knock that out.
There you
But it
go.
was great. It was a great experience. Sure was.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And you have a leadership post. Tell people a little bit about what you do.
I'm a lead pastor at Northridge Church, which is just about to turn 15 years old. A church that I planted in 2007, and so I've been with it over these years, trying to
Wow.
transition from being a church planter to now trying to lead people in a more mature church setting. So I tell people we're still teenagers, and so you have to kind of forgive us if we make mistakes. But it's been an interesting journey to start from scratch and then try to watch that mature. And so I've had to try to mature along the way too, as the church grows and as your approach has to change from getting something off the ground to moving that thing forward.
Yeah. And speaking of moving that thing forward, you're sitting in a space that's really cool. So we got a lot to talk about with anxiety and leadership, but tell everybody what the space you're sitting in and what you did there.
Yeah, we just our church campus is located about 10-12 minutes outside of the heart of the city, and we really just longed for a chance to be in the natural habitat, so to speak, of the people that we serve and that we're trying to reach. And so a space came available downtown, about 1,000 square feet in an old 1930s warehouse type building, brick building on Main Street. And we decided to renovate that, fix it up, and make it available for not only just our staff to office, but a space that we're hoping will be used to bring lots of different organizations and nonprofits to the table, where we can say, hey, tell us about what you do. Let's get to know each other, and how can we serve each other? So we're hoping that we can, this is called For Asheboro, and we're hoping to generate some synergy between organizations and people to help people have a positive attitude about their city, to be for each other rather than against each other in this particular culture that we're in right now.
That's really cool. I love that. I love the vision behind that, and the space is beautiful, and you've done a great job there. So,
Thanks.
Dean, as we turn the corner and really talk about this issue, when did you begin first experiencing anxiety in your leadership?
I would probably say it was around 8 years into this journey of being a church planter, getting this thing up off the ground. You stay really busy, and time just really flies, and you get really used to working all the time and not really realizing where you are personally, but your identity and your whole world just kind of gets wrapped up. And so 8 years into this, we actually purchased our first piece of property, and it was shortly after, like within a few weeks of signing a large purchase contract loan with the bank, that I had my first panic attack, not really aware of what was coming. There were warning signs, but I didn't catch it because I'd never been down that road before.
Yeah.
So it was about eight years into this work, following a pretty big risk step. You know what I mean?
So 8 years in, you're buying property, you're feeling now the pressure and the weight of, after 8 years of
Mhm.
really going full blast, to try
Right.
to start this church and get it going. How did your panic attack show up for you the first time?
Well, the first time, um, I had developed kind of an upper respiratory thing. You know, you get
Hmm.
those. It was January. We had signed the purchase in December, and I was still pushing myself, and I wasn't resting up to try to get over anything. I was just working through it.
Right.
And I remember coming home one night, had a relentless cough and fighting those kind of symptoms. And then I just remember thinking, I don't think I can breathe too well.
Mm,
It's just really hard to breathe right now.
wow.
And within just moments, it went from that to really convinced that I cannot breathe. And panic attack kicks in. I'm struggling to breathe. Called a doctor friend. He came over, and that really lasted for about 3 days. I mean, I started breathing better, but the state of mind that it put me in, the panic feeling that I was in, it just felt like my mind had broken, and I was worried that nothing was going to go back into the same place again.
Yeah.
So,
Golly, use the word broken, that you were worried
mhm.
that your mind was broken. What did you think was happening to you at that time?
I it was such a shock to my system to be dealing with this. It was so new that I really thought that um, something deeply internal was wrong with me, that I was not going to be able to continue to work. Uh, I had, it was such a panic feeling that I didn't want to be alone in a room. I remember my wife finally had to go to work. She couldn't stay home day after day. And so I remember going to a McDonald's and sitting in the booth just where the sun was shining in the window and it was warm. And I sat there for probably 4 hours with a notepad and just tried to journal my way through. But I really thought that my ability to function had come to an end. There was
Wow.
something deeply flawed with me to the point that this was just the way I was going to be.
Dude, that's a scary place. I'll never forget when I first had my first panic attack. It was after I had been in my role as a pastor, and I had been
Mhm.
visiting the hospital a lot and doing lots of funerals. And I remember walking out of the ICU one time with a good friend of mine who was on life support, and I remember feeling it for the first time, and I didn't know what was happening to me.
Mhm.
And you think you're broken, and it's just a very scary feeling. Dean, what were some of the narratives that were going on in your mind as all this was happening to your body physically?
Well, I think one of the things that was driving me to this point, uh, as I've reflected back on it, was just this pressure that I was putting on myself. I remember thinking that I was. Have you ever heard of the phrase "imposter syndrome"?
Oh yeah.
You know, I didn't really know what that was at the time, but I felt like since I started this church from nothing, people used to ask me, "Well, is it a real church, or who gives you the authority to do that?" Um, and so I'm thinking, "Am I a real pastor? As is this a real church? Am I good enough to do this?" And this, in the back of my mind, um, you watch people online and you see churches that seem to have everything together, and you know that you're spray painting and duct taping and fishing lining this thing together to try
Right.
to make a church grow and go. And so you just have this feeling inside of you that you're not the real deal, that you're less than what other people want, and sooner or later everybody's going to figure out,
Hmm.
and the whole thing's going to come down on you. That was kind of the narrative that was running in my head. Was, I don't know that I'm good enough to keep all of this up.
Yeah.
Um, it, it wasn't a matter of was I spiritually in touch with God well, or did God love me or not? It was just, do I have the ability to
Yeah.
lead this place at this level? And I just really began to doubt that as my body started shutting me down.
Mm, yeah. Yeah, that imposter syndrome is a big deal. I think in a lot of the conversations that I have in my coaching, that's a common topic that comes up where people will think that somebody's going to find out that I'm a fraud at some point in my life, and I'm scared to death of
Yeah, and you're
that.
not a fraud, but
Exactly.
in your own mind, you
Yes.
feel like that.
Yes. Okay. So when did you reach out for help and what did you do?
Well, that was about 8 years in, and it took a little while longer, a few more years. I kind of recovered from that and kind of forgot about it, to be honest with you. I just forgot about that, and I thought it was a one-off thing. And I got back into the same rhythms, the same patterns. Um, and then a few years later, I started. I had another upper respiratory thing. I was just sick again, and I was pushing through it. And I came home, sat on the couch, and couldn't breathe.
Mm,
This time, it it went from one panic attack to another. This time,
mm,
it was much greater. This time, it left me in a constant state of fear. I didn't know what was wrong. I just knew I was terrified all the time. And this stretched out for days. And
mm,
so I knew I needed help, and I wasn't sure what to do. I went to my general practice doctor. Um, he said, I can prescribe this for you to help it kind of pass. I go, yeah, but once it passes, it comes back. What am I going to do now? He said, I don't know what else to do for you. This just wasn't an area he believed in or was
sure.
experienced in. So I had to seek out a doctor who would deal with me with the mental health stuff that was going on. At the same time, I found a really great counselor and just started going to see him. He was seeing me 2 or 3 times a
Mm,
week,
that's so
and
good.
it took us about 6 months
Yeah.
to really get to a
Yeah.
healthier place. But it was really a long time, and it was a big struggle to try to get through those first few months.
So I want to come back to your experiences with your counselor, but you said something right before you shared that. You said, I found myself back into those same rhythms and patterns.
Hmm.
What were some of those rhythms and patterns that were unhealthy that you found yourself in?
You see, early on when we started the church, I got a lot of pride out of. I would get there really early in the morning, and I would work really hard, and then volunteers would come in the evening and help do construction and fixing the building up. And so I'd work late into the night. And I carried on that same mentality of, I'm going to build this dream, I'm going to make it happen. And I got into a really unhealthy pattern of, I love what I do, and so I do it every day. It's not really work to me, so it's
Yeah.
okay if I do it on Monday and Friday and Saturday and Sunday. And even when I would get sick, and even when I had those warning sign panic attacks early on, I didn't put two and two together, and I didn't figure out that I needed breaks, and I needed
Mm,
Sabbath, and I needed rest. So I was back into that, and I wasn't just doing it all on my own physically.
right.
I was carrying the leadership on my own shoulders too. So we
Mm,
had a leadership structure in place, but these men that we'd put in place, they weren't really carrying the burden.
right.
They were just kind of hanging out with me once a month for a meeting.
Right.
It wasn't their fault. I just didn't know how to let go of the
Mm,
responsibility. So
yeah.
when we signed that banknote, I felt like it was all on me when I went to bed that night,
Right.
because it kind of was.
Right.
So those were the
Ooh.
patterns that I went right back into again.
Got you. Got you. So when you finally connected with your counselor, um, and I appreciate you being open about that. And one of the things you and I
Sure.
talked about with Generation Z is this upcoming generation is very open and honest about all their mental health, challenges, and they want,
Yeah.
everyone else to be as well. Um, what were some of the things you discovered from working with your counselor that were helpful for you?
I think the primary thing, the first thing that helped was he kept saying, "I don't think you understand who you are.
Mm,
I think," he said, "you describe yourself to me, but that's not who I see."
mm,
And this may sound I still deal with it. I still struggle with it. But he said, "Do
yeah.
you understand? You are the lead pastor of a large, successful local church. You've accomplished that. You're doing that. You're already doing it. You're doing it well." And when he described that to me, I thought, no, that's some of the guys I see online. That's not me.
Right.
He's like, you've launched 3 new nonprofits out of your church ministries already, and the church is growing 100 people a year, and they're really healthy, and everything's going great. I'm going, I don't see it. So
Wow.
it took me a little while, and honestly, coaching and hanging out with you for the last couple of years, just to help me have a little bit of confidence in what God is actually doing in me and who I'm becoming, and what we've accomplished together, and just helping me understand myself better
Hmm.
so that I could control that narrative in my own head, because I was
Hmm.
talking to myself in a very negative fashion. He helped me reverse that a bit.
So talk to me about the narrative. Like what were some of the narratives that you changed, and what did you put in your life to kind of help you?
Well, I would, like I said, I always thought that the things I did were just pretend versions of the real versions I saw everybody else doing.
Mm,
Whenever we would try to serve people, I felt like I was just imitating something else that I saw. It wasn't real. Um, and so what I started doing was trying to focus more on the people that I was serving, more on the people that I was engaging with, and watching life change happen,
yeah.
watching joy come back, um,
Yeah.
and just instead of focusing so much on the imperfections that I saw, because you know
Yeah.
how it is. You do all this stuff, and then you still see the things that didn't get done.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
We
everybody
see
else sees, yeah,
we see the problems first, right? It's like, oh.
yeah. So it was really helpful for me to, and then I just had to intentionally. I even incorporated into my day certain phrases that I would say at particular times during the day, because there's certain things we do every day, the same routine.
Oh
So I
yeah.
started attaching certain phrases so that I would remind myself of what was true
Mm.
about me, and instead of always being so hard on myself.
Boy, there's power in the visuals that we have
Hmm.
around us, right? It's why we have pictures in our offices, or there's quotes that we
Sure.
love that we have those around us. I agree with you. I think there's power in being able to put things in front of us to help us remember, either who we are or why we're doing what we're doing, or that we're not imposters. We're actually all on the same journey together, trying to get it right,
Yeah.
and nobody's perfect. And there's
Hmm.
something so powerful about that. Was there any specific phrase that you've really adopted that you kind of stick to a lot?
I think there were so many. There was an 8.5 sheet of paper
Yeah,
that my counselor had me tape onto the bathroom mirror. And so
yeah.
every day I would read down through there, and they would be things like, "You are strong and creative, successful individual. You are compassionate and loving and caring person.
Hmm.
You are a great husband, a great dad," all these kinds of things. I really think the one thing that really changed for me, well, the one phrase, and the phrase kind of changed from morning to morning, but I got into the routine of, before I allowed my feet to hit the floor when I slide out of the bed, I would always say, "This day does not belong to me. This day belongs to you, God. So do with it what you would do." And I think I just
Mm.
started doing that. I started taking the pressure off of me to accomplish that whole list of things that I knew was waiting for me.
Man, that's
And
so
it just
good.
helped. It just helped for me to articulate that.
Yeah.
After a while, my wife would go, "Why are you sitting on the edge of the bed for a minute before you get up? Are you okay?"
Yeah.
I mean, and some mornings when you slide out, it's just like, "Oh God, help me today,"
Yeah.
because you're just
Yeah.
sliding out and you're
Right.
up against it. But it just
Well,
slowly started changing the way my mind thinks, and that
well,
alters the reality in time.
there's something so powerful about what you said. I think that I don't know that we all always understand, but training your body is one thing that we all try to do when we work out or go to the gym or that kind of thing. But
Hmm.
training your mind to think a certain way is the same
Hmm.
type of discipline, isn't it?
It really
Like,
is.
there have been times I've gotten out of bed and a thought hit my mind and I went, it was such a horrible thought about myself that there have been times
Yeah.
I've gone, that is unacceptable. Like, to even think that about myself is unacceptable. Like,
You'd never let yourself get away with that to someone else.
yeah, it's like I would never say that to someone else. Why would I say
Yeah,
that to myself? Right.
that's really where we've got to begin.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing the way that God's made the mind work and how it can change. That's what brought me the most relief. Was the first thing I thought, you remember I said, was my mind has broken. And then I realized, because I realized it's my own mind that's doing this. My body is
Right.
shutting itself down.
Right.
But then I realized that God has made the mind to reinvent itself and to
Right.
learn totally new ways of thinking. So
Yeah.
I started trying to read about neuroplasticity and all these things that are way over my head. But it gave me a lot of encouragement to realize that it can be renewed and it can be restored.
Dude, that's powerful. Dean, what would you say to a person out there who is listening to this, who is starting to find themselves struggling with anxiety, and maybe this is a new phenomenon for them, and they think that
Mhm,
they're broken and they can't continue to do what they
mhm.
love to do and they're scared to death? What would you say?
Well, the first thing I would say is the same thing a little nurse practitioner said to me the first day I walked into her office. She said, "This will resolve."
Wow.
And that did so much good for me. And
Mm,
it really will resolve. This is a season, it's not a permanent state.
wow.
There are things that you can begin to incorporate even right now. Your body is for you, not against you. Your
Mm,
mind is for you, not against you. The things that are happening are rumble strips. You're hitting the edge or the warning track, and your body's saying some things need to change.
oh, that's
And
good.
so, as you begin to change these things, it may take time. It took me 6 months to start feeling good progress. It took me 2 years to feel completely whole again,
Mm.
but it does resolve.
What I like about that, there's hope there. And
Hmm.
when you're scared to death, the one thing you want to feel that there's hope. And I really love the imagery you used. You're getting to the edge of the track there. When you start
Yeah,
feeling anxiety, that means, hey, there may be some kind of what you talked about earlier, some rhythms, some patterns that I've kind
yeah.
of allowed to creep into my life. And now it's time to tighten up a little bit. It's time to
Hmm.
intentionally address some of those things. Are there just maybe one or two or three things you would say right now, hey, if you're battling this, you're dealing with this, here's some things
Hmm.
you can do right now that will help your body begin to heal?
Yeah, some things as I look back and some things that I changed about the way I did things that really helped me. One, I learned how to work at work and stop
Mm.
working at home. I know right now everybody's struggling with working at home, so this is really hard to do, but
Yes.
try to create some margin somehow. I used to get up and I would immediately start working. And what I found was the more anxious I got, here's the thing, I was waking up at 3, 4 in the morning and just getting right to work because I couldn't sleep.
Right.
Turns out that lack of sleep was fueling the anxiety and the eventual burnout.
Mm.
And so, good sleep hygiene is so important.
That's good.
Um, Take time to wind down in the evenings, get away from devices and TVs so that your mind can relax and settle down so that you can get good sleep.
That's
When we
good.
don't get good sleep, I mean, I thought it was really super spiritual or something when I woke up at 3 a.m. and I started working.
Yeah.
Turns out it was really the worst thing I could do for myself and everybody else included.
Right.
The other thing I would say is just be really careful how you talk to yourself.
Mm,
Listen to that conversation that's going on in your head, and don't be constantly comparing yourself and putting yourself on the short end of that comparison. Um, the final thing I would say is you might look at your workload and go, but I don't feel like I've got too much to do. I feel like I can do more. And what I learned was it wasn't really the workload that got me. It was the things just under the surface that got me.
mm,
It was the relational conflicts. It was the unresolved things, tensions. It was the conversations I really needed to have, but I was avoiding having. All of those things needed to be cleared up so that I could de-stress. But I was keeping all those things in, and on top of not sleeping well and working too many hours,
mm.
all that stuff piles up. So it's not always the stuff on the on your plate.
Yeah.
So keep short accounts with things. Have those conversations you need to have. Organize well. Declutter every area of your life.
Hmm.
Keep things as clean as you can. Those are just some things that I've been trying to learn to do. And but really key, find a good counselor to work with.
Hmm.
Everybody needs it. It's great for you.
Hmm.
Work with your doctor. Don't be afraid to talk about these things. Um,
Mm.
so those would be some of the things that I would encourage people to do, because this will resolve.
Yeah.
Uh, and you're not the only one, and your mind is not broken.
There you
It
go.
can heal.
So you touched on this just now, but as we kind of round the corner and kind of finish things out, talk about the significance of relationships in your life and how they can be a source of a lot of anxiety, or the source of a lot of peace and contentment and satisfaction um,
Yeah,
and just friendship. Talk about the significance of those and what they were like for you during that time.
yeah. I think for me, my 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 drive and my desire to succeed pushed everything to the edge. And so I had a lot of relationships, a lot of time invested in people that I was working closely with. But those people that I really desperately needed intimacy with, my wife and my kids, my family, close friends, that all kind of got pushed out. So
Mm,
I was not getting the relational needs met, and I wasn't giving into those relationships. Instead, it was all a work environment. And so when things got stressful and when relationships started to get tense, I had nowhere to go with that. So
mm,
I didn't maintain good relational um, flow with the people I worked with, and I
yeah.
would hold things back and go, okay, well, I don't want to address that. I don't want to address that. So that
Yeah.
damaged those relationships. And then then I would take that home and I would damage the relationships with the people at home. And so I've tried to flip that. It takes good coaching. That's been helpful for me to learn how to create margin, learn how to
Hmm.
have conversations that are difficult to have. I felt at the time it would do damage if I had those conversations. Turns out it helps them and it helps me.
That's so
Um,
good.
but both of those relationships are so critical, and
Hmm.
we often do damage to both.
Yeah. I like what you said about keeping short accounts
Hmm.
and just trying to resolve those things that may be loose ends that need to be resolved, and then trying to find those critical relationships in your life and making sure that you're maintaining those in a healthy way, because that's a
Hmm.
huge part of our mental health and
Yeah,
stability and all that kind of stuff. Dude, man, thank you so much for your honesty and
yeah,
truthfulness about your journey. I think this is something that if all leaders are honest, they deal with, just because leadership is hard.
yeah.
And it's a very difficult thing to do. But I think if we're all honest, we deal with this in some capacity. So thank you for for telling your story. And guys, thank you for watching. And we just hope that this was an encouragement and inspiration for you. If this is something you're dealing with, obviously you want to talk to your doctor and those people that take care of you and get their professional advice. But we hope from a spiritual standpoint and a leadership standpoint that this was helpful. So thank you for watching. Dean, thank you again for your time today.
Yeah, thank you, buddy.